So I almost designed a soundproof wall that was acoustically perfect, but vapor and building science wise was a disaster. And this is one of those things, this whole story of this video is going to be talking about the things that you probably never think of when you're trying to soundproof a room. And honestly, it's one of those things that I've had to adapt to my scope as I've been building these projects. In this case, it was a project for a client where we're doing a full, basically mini house in his backyard. It could be considered an ADU, an accessory dwelling unit, kitchen, bathroom, 2-room home recording studio, really amazing space. But there was no architect on this project. So I am the chief designer and I am making all the shots. And as an acoustician and a sound isolation designer, that puts me in a much larger role that is often decided by an architect. But what I want to talk about today is the things to look for, the things that I have learned where I almost made a big mistake and I had to ask a single question on this project that then self-corrected everything. So let's dive into what that looked like here on this lesson on the really interesting aspect of building these studios, which is vapor control in the walls. All right, I'm being a little bit facetious here, but seriously, this is important stuff. Otherwise, you get mold in your walls, and that is not anything anybody wants. So let's dive in. All right, so the first thing I want to show you guys is an actual red line here. This is a screenshot I took from a set of plans that I'm doing right now. And redlining, for those of you who don't know, is the internal revision process we do at SPYS Designs. This is what I spend a lot of my days doing. We have an amazing drafting team here, and they'll draft up these designs that I come up with, and then I review them. Well, I was looking at this. I was looking at our roof system right here, and what we had originally was 1-inch EPS, which is called extruded polystyrene foam. What I was trying to do was create a hot roof, and my intuition was correct. This is what's known as an unvented assembly, meaning there's no air that's coming up through this cathedral ceiling here. You can see our acoustic panels, you can see our genie clips for decoupling, and then you can see right here, which is our 2 layers of mass, and we got 2 layers of mass on the outside. Typically a great design, right? You have the mass spring mass effect. You're getting what is essentially a great soundproof assembly. The problem is I questioned that 1-inch EPS, and I was right to do it. And I went in and did a ton of research as I was redlining. And what the research told me is that I actually wanted to change this to a 2-inch polyiso nail base, which I'm not going to totally get into, but it's an exterior type of foam that has a little bit of OSB on the outside of it that allows the roofer to nail into it. And what it's doing is it's actually keeping our roof warm over here. And then what's happening here is that I also had, and this was another big mistake here, is I had a layer of 23/32 OSB. You can see it right here. I redlined it out. 23/32 OSB is the first layer on this. You can see it over here again. I redlined that out. Oh, sorry, down somewhere around here. Yeah, right here, 23/32 OSB right there. And what I learned in doing even more research is that I had created a trap space. Moisture was getting trapped literally in this space here. It would come in here. The primary vapor drive wants to dry out towards the interior in Florida, which we're going to get to in a second. And I had stopped it completely with my OSB layer. And I was like, oh my gosh. This is something many of you guys probably want to do, and it's not necessarily a bad thing, but it was a bad thing in Florida, where the climate means that you cannot put what's known as a class 2 vapor retarder inside on the interior. Now, this is some heady stuff. This is like serious vapor sciences. This is building science. This is going way beyond sound isolation. And like I said, way beyond my scope typically, but this is still super important to understand. And a lot of people would miss it. I was on the phone literally today with the contractor talking about this, and he was like, oh yeah, I didn't really think about moisture control. And I was like, yeah, it's not the fun thing most people think about on a project. So with all this, I'm glad I caught it. It's making the project even better. But what I wanted to come back to is the point that if you put OSB behind your drywall, a lot of people want to do it because they're like, oh, it's a great way to nail acoustic panels to my wall. I don't need to find studs, blah, blah, blah. I've heard it many times. More and more, we've moved away from this at SPYS Designs. This is one of the reasons. It's also a massive cost savings savings for our clients. And there's just numerous reasons why we've moved away from the backer of the plywood on most of our builds. But in this case, the reason was vapor management. So let's continue on here. So next here we have this really interesting diagram, and let me explain it. This is our typical wall system because the same problem was happening in our walls as it was happening in our roof, where I caught it in the red line. But I had to change this all over the plans because in Florida, in Tallahassee, Florida, where we're building this studio, the outside here you can have siding. We ideally want a vented gap here, which allows, it's called a rain screen. It allows any moisture caught behind the siding to dry out, and that's a really good high performance build system. And then we have our 2 layers of 23/32 oriented strand board, OSB. That's working as our mass layer on the exterior of the building. It's creating all that mass to stop sound. Then we have our 2x4 with insulation in there. We're actually going to use mineral wool, not because all you crazies out there say, hey, we need mineral wool for sound isolation. No, we are 100% using mineral wool, in this case rock wool, for its drying ability. In such a humid, moist climate like Florida, having mineral wool is a really big plus. And so I said, hey, is this something the client would be willing to pay for? The builder was like, yes, he wants to do it right. I said, okay, let's specify mineral wool for that reason. Then we have our 1-inch air gap so we don't have a decoupling, another layer of 2x4 walls with the mineral wool in it. And then finally, we had our OSB and then our 5/8 inch drywall. And I switched that to 2 layers of 5/8 inch gypsum. And this is the crazy stuff about classes. So class 2 means it's semi-impermeable. There's a thing called a perm rating, which I'm not going to get into, but it has 0.3 perms. The class 3 over here, which is our gypsum board or drywall plus latex paint, has a 2 to 3 perm rating, meaning it's vapor open, meaning vapor can travel through it, diffuse through the actual material itself. Whereas with the class 2, vapor can't transmit through it as easily as the vapor class 3. Confusing, I know, but it's all just the way it is. Now, the most important thing is in Florida, in Tallahassee, the vapor drive, meaning the direction that we want the vapor to dry towards, is going to be inward, mainly because on the vast majority of months in Florida, it's very, very hot outside and it's cooler on the inside. So we want that vapor to dry towards the cooler area. And that's what we're doing here. In Florida, you really aren't going to have a vapor drive that goes out. So this is now a much better system. We have OSB to gypsum, 0.3 to 2.5 perms, which makes it go from class 2 to class 3. Again, that changed there. And then the surface density goes to 2.4 to 2.2 PSF. I think that's actually debatable. I've seen numbers all across the map of how much plywood weighs. So anywhere from 2.2, 2 pounds per square foot, 2.2, or even upwards of 2.4. Drywall's around 2.2. I've even seen it at 2.3. So roughly similar, and you get 5 to 10x the drying capacity, and this says for half a decibel. So either way, a really good exchange for a much better vapor decision, even though it has nothing to do with acoustics. Fascinating, right? All right, let's keep moving here. So it's important to know that vapor drive, meaning the direction we want the moisture to dry out in a wall, changes based on climate. So this is not simple like, oh, it always goes inward. No, it goes inward in Florida. But for example, we're also doing a project in Arkansas and another project in Colorado. So I'm thinking about vapor drive in all these places. It's mind-boggling. I know, it makes my head spin. So in Florida, we already talked about this. Vapor drives inward, nearly year-round, class 3 only on the interior sides, never class 1 or class 2. Air conditioning makes the interior the cold side almost every month of the year. In Arkansas, and very similar to Nashville where I live, we have a vapor drive is going in both directions, so it dries both ways. So it reverses seasonally. It must dry in both directions, meaning interior use is a class 3 or a responsive retarder. There's something called a vapor variable membrane. You can Google it, AI it, whatever. You'll learn about it. It's an interesting technique. But essentially what you would do in these climates is usually simplest side, just use craft faced or foil faced insulation on the inside. That acts as your class 3 vapor retarder or barrier. So that's what you would do there. In Colorado, it gets even more crazy because you're mostly drying outward in the winter time. So that has this outward drive by code class 1 or 2 required by code on the interior side. So depending on your region, the vapor management changes. And this is why this gets really challenging and why it's easy for builders, designers, architects, even myself to miss if I'm not thinking about it. And I can tell you now, I'm always thinking about this on every project and doing some research to make sure that at least I'm thinking about it. And if I'm working with an architect or a builder, trying to say, hey, did we think about this? Did we design our walls accordingly? All right, so here we have the roof assembly, and this is a really complex assembly. Part of it is designed this way because we have what's known as an unvented roof assembly, which is the best for sound isolation. So I try to do these as much as I can all the time when the budget and the system allows me to. And in this case, what we're doing from the top is we have our asphalt shingles. We have a self-adhered membrane, which is class 1, a permeable membrane. And then we're going to have the OSB nailer facer and a rigid foam board, which is that polyiso that I was talking about. And then our 23/30 OSB roof deck right here that it sits on top of, that's class 2. All of this is considered class 1-ish because it's impermeable when it's all put together. As a side note, this little membrane here is vapor permeable and it allows this layer right here to dry outward. That's just a side note in case anyone wanted to question why I was doing that. Right now, there's no drying path in either direction inside of here. Vapor was trapped and we had the OSB like I originally had. There's nowhere for the vapor to go, so it literally molds inside the cavity. It's dark and the mold just loves it and it just grows and it's bad. So that's not good. It also can lead to like roof failures and holes and things like that over time. So this is serious. We have our genie clip assembly here with the furring channel to decouple our drywall. So once we change this from class 2 to class 3, we move the OSB to 5/8 inch drywall, and suddenly we go from less than 1 perm to 2 to 3 perms, and we go class 2 to class 3, and then it dries inward. The only available direction in a 2A climate, which is what climate zone 2A, which is what Tallahassee, Florida is. Then we've solved our vapor management problem. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. So that is the crazy thing about all this. Like, if I hadn't, as I was redlining, being like, something is not right, and like just that instinct in the back of my mind to like double check everything, no one would have caught this. And 7 years down the road, 10 years down the road, it would have become a problem. And that's the type of level of design that's so important on these projects. So what is the takeaway here? The takeaway is that this is complex. I mean, the more I do this, the more I'm like, this is insanity trying to pull all this off perfectly, because there's just so many variables in building these types of systems and these types of rooms. I didn't even get into the air conditioning system and the dehumidification system and what we have to think through that goes so far beyond sound isolation. And the reason is that because when we're building these assemblies, we're doing stuff that's out of the norm of typical construction, and that has ramifications that just ripple effect, whether it goes into your vapor flow like I described in this video, or it goes into your HVAC design, which many HVAC technicians aren't even ready for what it's like to have a completely airtight room with warm people, like multiple people in there, not like a typical house, and then also studio equipment that's putting off even more heat. So you can see how all of this stuff, it goes way beyond just, should I use green glue? Should I use rock wool? I'm not making fun of people, sort of, but I mean, I'm just like, can't tell you enough how much more there is to building these types of rooms properly than just reading a book or going on YouTube and just trying to like figure it all out. So if you have been convinced that this is crazy and you want a little more guidance on it, I'm here to help you if it's the right fit. One of the first things I always recommend my potential clients go to is the Soundproof planning site assessment. So the Soundproof site assessment is the first way to just double check, is my location, is where I'm going to plan on building even the right place? Am I going to hit a bunch of red flags that would destroy my project from the beginning? So I always lead people there first because I'm like, if you can make these changes, if you can understand what you're stepping into, then everything else down the road when it comes to vapor management and things like that will just fall into place so much better. So to check that out, just go to soundproofyourstudio.com/plan. That is soundproofyourstudio.com/plan. My name is Wilson Harwood, and I am the founder of SPYS Designs, and we build sound isolated rooms all over North America and Canada.